I would put it to anyone who says we need to think about the consequences of supplying Taurus, for example. I fully agree, and we need to think about the consequences of not supplying Taurus too. And this understanding of non-decision as also decision has not yet fully permeated German policy making in the way that it should. So what are the consequences of not delivering Taurus? Let's be very realistic about this. One is Ukraine is more likely to lose the war. And let's be very clear again and realistic. The worst outcome this year is no longer stalemate. The worst outcome is defeat. That will have huge implications for Germans' security. It will have huge implications for European security in general. And obviously a negative impact, a massively negative impact on Ukraine. Unless we give Ukraine what it needs to shift to active defense this year, we face a risk of collapse. What we're also doing by not supplying Taurus is signaling weakness and signaling that we can be bullied, signaling that we will back down, that we're still self-deterring in the face of Putin's bravado and blackmail, in effect. He's trying to get us not to stand up for our democracies, not to defend ourselves, and not to defend our values and our interests, in fact. So we're signaling that we're playing his game, that we're allowing him to call the shots. That doesn't bode well for our future deterrence, and all of this means we are much likely to face a larger war in Europe, and we're much likely to have to pay a huge bill for defence budgets on the level of Cold War type defence spending of 3, possibly 4% of GDP. And it's not just me saying that. Defence Minister Boris Pistorius said this at the Munich Security Conference as well, that if we fail to properly give the impression that we are deterring Russia, we could face much, much higher defence spending. So I think for anyone who talks about consequences, they really have to factor that in as well. And last thing on that is we've seen that repeatedly there have been no consequences for us of supplying higher classes of weapons to Ukraine. Be that long-range missiles from the UK, be it main battle tanks from Germany eventually, as well as other allies, or the multiple launch rocket systems that were proved so effective back in 2022. I don't know if you remember that joke that was doing the rounds back in 2022, that it's an unknown property of the Marder infantry fighting vehicle, that if you deliver it within 3 months of the start of a conflict, it triggers a nuclear war. This was one of the features of that system that's not advertised in the catalogue, but seemed to dictate decision making. And you and I can both remember Chancellor Scholz telling the Bundestag that delivering Marder AFVs risked a catastrophic escalation. Well, it didn't. It never did.